In this video, I'm going to show you how to build this all-wood standing desk for less than $400. Before we get into the process, let's go through the history a little bit. Back around 2012, 2013, somewhere in that area, I bought an IKEA, some Swedish name dining room table to be my office desk. At the time, my wife and I were living in a small townhouse, so a lot of the spaces had to be dual purpose. My desk was also my workbench for when I was doing PC repair and other technical work like that in that space. Then we moved into our current house, and the IKEA, some Swedish name dining room table came with into my new office. Since we moved, I focused on building out the commons area of the house, and my office really turned into my storage area that I occasionally played video games in. Then COVID hit, and like a lot of other people, I had to work from home. At first, just like webcams and headsets, standing desks were sold out everywhere. The limitations of the dining table were becoming very apparent after working 40 plus hours a week on it. Because of the dining room table height, the support bars getting in the way, and the distance my monitor arms had to travel for them to be usable, the IKEA Swedish name dining room table had to go. As COVID lockdown went on, some of the inventory issues were going away and items were back in stock. I was about to pull the trigger on a standing desk from Amazon when I got a work email saying everyone is to go back into the office like quote unquote normal the Tuesday after Memorial Day. Needless to say, I did not buy a standing desk then. Fast forward to now. Later this month, I will be starting a new job that is 100% remote, so I need a desk that can actually be a desk and not a dining room table. While reviewing options, there are many options in the $300 to $500 range that would work. The things that they all have in common are that they're only 2 feet wide, have a single motor, and made out of MDF. If you want a dual motor setup or a desk that is wider than 2 feet, then you're in that $500 to $800 range. And if you want real wood instead of MDF, the sky's the limit. Since I've been getting into woodworking lately, my new hobby due to COVID, I decided to buy a standing desk frame and then make the desktop out of supplies from my local Home Depot. Let's get into the build and I'll go over all the costs at the end. To get started, trim 1/4 inch to 1/2 inch off of the edge of all of your boards to make sure you have a square edge for measuring. Next, cut your boards to length, measuring off the edge you just cut. Depending upon the style you're going for, this could be a 2-step process. In my case, I need the feet of the desk frame to be at least 50 inches wide to fit my chair mat in between them. Also, I want the frame supports to be attached to the center section of the desk, not the end pieces. To get the length of the center boards, you need to take the total length of the desk and subtract the width of 2 of your boards. In my case, I'm using 2x6 lumber that is actually 5.5 inches wide or 11 inches total. My goal for the desk is to be about 70 inches long. I'm going to make the math easy on myself and cut these center boards at 60 inches. This will bring the total length of my desk to 71 inches. Later on, I'll be trimming the center boards one more time on both sides to make sure the ends are flat for the end pieces. This will remove the extra inch in my lazy math. If you're not doing any end pieces, then measure the total length of the desk and make your cuts. When arranging your wood, you want to do 2 things. 1, create the look you want to see on the desk, and 2, alternate the wood grain. Point 1 is pretty self-explanatory. Arrange your lumber to show the characteristics of the wood you want to see. And point 2 is a little bit more involved. When you look at the edge of the wood, you'll see the rings of the section of the tree the wood was cut out of. When the wood expands and contrasts, it is going to do it over the grain pattern. To make sure your desktop expands and contrasts evenly, you want to alternate the grain patterns for each piece of wood. Think of the rings in the grain as a smiley face and a frowny face. You want to alternate the happy and sad faces. It's pocket hole time. I just got this Craig pocket hole jig and it's the first project I've been able to use it on. Anyway, flip your boards over so you have the bottom side up and label your boards including the outside edge of your first and last board. I started by going in from this side about 2.5 inches, making lines across all 5 boards every 12 inches or so, and marking the direction of the screws on each board. As I was going, I alternated directions of the screws, so the first screw on board 1 goes into board 2. and then the second screw goes from board 2 into board 1. I continue this pattern throughout the piece. At the end, boards 2 and 4 are identical for hole locations. Boards 1 and 5 are a mirror image of each other, and board 3 looks like if you combine the hole patterns from board 1 and 5 onto a single board. There will be a picture later on that shows the hole patterns after everything's screwed together. I was so excited to use the infamous Craig pocket hole jig that for the first 4 or 5 screws, I used the wrong size screws. Because this is 2x6 lumber, I needed to use 2 1/4 inch screws and not 1 1/4 inch screws. As you can tell by the annotations, the screws magically change in color in the video, and the part of the video of me fixing the screws, the issue has been resolved and the desktop is now locked in tight. The other thing I realized while making this desktop was the usefulness of the long lines to mark the screw holes. Originally I made them the entire width of the boards just to help with alignment since I wasn't using biscuits, dowels, or dominoes. But those same lines came in handy for lining up the pocket hole jig to drill the pocket holes themselves. To join the pieces of wood together, run a line of wood glue down the center of the edge of one of the boards and line it up. I used clamps to keep things in line throughout the process. One of the first boards was a little warped, so I needed the clamps to provide a little extra force to keep it straight. For the rest of them, I just need the clamps on the ends where the boards meet to keep the seam in line. I assembled this in 2 sections at first just so I could give the wood glue a chance to cure before trying to join the warped board to the rest of the piece. If you have better lumber than I did, then you can easily go right in order. If you look closely, you can see the slightly different lengths of the boards. At most of it's an 1/8 of an inch, but because I'm going to be joining the ends of the boards of the center section, I need the surface perfectly flat. You could use sandpaper or a hand planer to even out the edges, but to fix my lazy math earlier, I need to remove 1/2 inch on each side. And I'm lazy, so I clamped down a straight piece of scrap composite decking and grabbed my circular saw. Now I got flat sides for my end pieces. So I was trying out some new camera settings and trying to produce better quality content, and somehow the footage of cutting and attaching the end boards and sanding got deleted. I know you're super disappointed that you don't get to see 4K sanding footage. I'm sorry, I will make it up to you in the future. As you can tell in the background here, I need to make some more furniture anyways, so I'm just gonna run through those pieces here really quickly. So while I'm doing that, since there isn't anything to actually watch in this project for the next 30 seconds or so, you should go and hit that subscribe button, that notification bell, so you can get alerted when I actually make that 4K sanding footage for you. Either way, after you trim all your edges and they're straight, go ahead and create pocket holes at the end of each of your boards for those end pieces to attach to. If you're not doing that, you can skip this step obviously, but by creating pocket holes in the center section going out into the end pieces, it will create a much stronger hold than if you create pocket holes on your end pieces and then trying to screw the pocket hole screws into the end grain of the center section. Then go and measure the width of your desk after it's joined together, and then cut 2 boards to length, 1 for each side. Give yourself roughly up to 1/8 of an inch of extra wood on those end pieces, just to give you a little fluff room as you're lining it up. Decide which side you want to face up, and then join the end boards together just like you joined the center section together. Now on to sanding. I originally started with 60 grit sandpaper and went over all of it, but I had issues getting the manufacturer's stamp that was on the wood off with 60 grit, so I actually went down to 40 grit, sanded off everything there, and then worked my way back up to 220 grit by doing 1 level of grit and then wiping all the excess off with mineral spirits, letting it dry, and continuing that process on. And then before I started staining, I flipped it over so the bottom was up again, and I just did a quick pass over with 60 grit sandpaper on the bottom to remove any potential get a splinter while doing cable management possibilities that were going to be in the future. Alright, we're all caught up. Let's go on to staining. For both staining and clear coat, I use Varathane's Premium Aged Barrel Wood Stain and Varathane's Ultimate Water-Based Polyurethane with Matte Finish. Both products recommend 2 to 3 coats with different intervals in between. I applied 3 coats of stain and then 3 coats of clear coat. Most of the products have a couple of normal or recommended ways for using their products. Just read the instructions and apply the product in the manner you're most comfortable with. It's that simple. And no, I'm not going to try and make you watch 6 rounds of staining. Now that the desk top is constructed, it's time to build the motorized frame. The instructions weren't the greatest, but it was easy enough to work through with all the pictures and whatnot. After a frame was put together, I traced out the frame on the underside of the desk top and made pilot holes to guide the screws. I didn't attach it now because my office is in the furthest spot away from the garage and it was easier to move the desk in 2 pieces instead of 1. I got the frame and the desktop in my new office and lined everything up. The traced outline really helped lining the top up with the frame while working underneath the desk. Then I screwed it in using the included screws that came with the frame. Before I go and cable manage everything, let's make sure this thing works first. The final measurements for this desk worked out to be 70 inches long by 27 inches wide. The size provides plenty of space for me to have my personal computer set up along with my future work computer while still being able to fit the desk through a standard residential door frame. The materials that I used in this project are as follows: 6 2x6 by 8 feet long boards, roughly 30 Craig 2¼ inch coarse pocket hole screws, wood glue, a partial can of wood stain, and a partial can of clear coat to protect it. As you saw in this video, you're going to need some tools to assemble it. If you want to go completely old school and only use hand tools, it's doable. It's a lot of work, but it's doable. But I'm lazy, so here's a quick recap of the power tools I use to make it go a lot faster. A miter saw, an impact driver / electric screwdriver, pocket hole jig, circular saw, clamps, power sander, and sandpaper at 40, 60, 120, 150, and 220 grits. Plus, you're going to need some random accessories recommended by your wood stain, clear coat paint companies like rags, foam brushes, paint brushes, something along those lines. All those kind of miscellaneous $1 or $2 items. There are many options to assemble the desktop depending upon the look you're going for. I just happen to have a random assortment of tools already and just built it as is. The only tool I had to buy for this project was 220 grit sandpaper and some extra rags to wipe off the extra wood stain. Technically, everything that was done with the circular saw and the miter saw could be handled by a hand saw if that's what you want to do. For your price totals to live up to the title of this video, this is where we are at. As of today, on November 8th, 2020, the materials from Home Depot during a COVID-caused lumber storage are as follows: $73.60 for your stain and your lumber. The desk frame itself was $269.99 off of Amazon after a $20 Amazon coupon, which brings your total before sales tax to $343.59. That also provides almost $60 to pick up those random odds and ends like rags, foam brushes, sandpaper, etc. If you need to create a little bit more room in that budget for a missing power tool, and you don't care about having a dual motor setup for your standing desk, there are plenty of single motor options available on Amazon that would drop the frame cost down to somewhere between $200 and $240 depending upon manufacturer. Which in turn, by swapping out the desk frame, would allow you to bump up that extra fluff room budget or accessory budget to about $130, which would cover most power tools or most entry-level power tools by Ryobi. So if you needed a miter saw, you could get a entry-level Ryobi miter saw for about that price tag, give or take. Though everything that I used, all the links to it, or at least everything material-wise, all the links are in the description. I don't know how many of my tools are still current tools where I can get actionable links off of them anymore. But if I can find them, they're down there. If not, oh well. If you have any questions, comments, concerns, want to make fun of me, want to ask how I did something, feel free to leave it below. I try to respond as soon as possible. Thank you for watching this video. My name is Terry, and this is my lab. If you liked what you watched and you want to see more of this or tech-related videos, go ahead and click that subscribe button and the notification bell so you are notified the moment I release new content. If you want to see even more of me or my projects, go ahead and follow me on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram at TD Sheridan Lab, or at our website at tdsheridanlab.com.